And it's a question that is not fun to ask, but I do believe it is one that is earned. If you were the number one quarterback in the draft, right? You are a prospect that has, by the end of your college career, probably spent somewhere between 12 and 15 years working towards the goal of making yourself the best potential NFL prospect. And then you did that to the best of your ability. You became a superstar, and the Panthers had the number one overall pick, and for the sake of the conversation, they've made it obvious they want a quarterback. That's the conceit. Would you consider making it very well known publicly and to the Panthers privately that you refuse to play for the Panthers? It's so bad, I'm not going to do it. Maybe even say that about 2 or 3 teams. Maybe like, hey, listen, I'm not going to the Titans. I'm not going to the Jets. I'm not going to the Panthers. Whichever ones you want. Would you consider it? Sounds crazy, right? There is precedent for this. John Elway, Eli Manning. Which you may go, only 2? There's only been like 50 or 60 first overall picks in NFL drafts in history. So we're looking at handful of percent. This isn't 0.001%. This isn't your lottery odds. This is, it happens every handful of decades. Would you consider it? Should you consider it? Todd McShay, who a former ESPN draft guru, now working for The Ringer, has a podcast, and he thinks it might happen with a specific quarterback, Shador Sanders, the son of Deion Sanders, and the quarterback at Colorado.
Do you think for a second that Prime is going to allow his son to go to Cleveland or to Carolina? I think it is a legitimate conversation. I'm convinced of it. It will be done. Honest to God, I think Carolina would want to take Shador. I don't think it will be allowed. But if there's one place I would not want him to go, simply because of ownership, not of the individuals there, not the coaching staff, not the personnel department, simply because of ownership and what has gone on there with every other quarterback that's gone into that abyss, that's the last place I would want him to go.
Shador Sanders and the Eli Manning situation do look pretty similar, right? Like kind of the lineage, the very, very famous, very, very successful NFL families, right? Because the thing that you need in order to make any of these requests or any of these demands plausible is leverage. You need to make them believe that you can follow through, not just call your bluff, which is why John Elway, who had the Yankees drafting him, had a legit, I'll just go play baseball. And Eli Manning, whose dad was an NFL guy already, and Archie Manning and his brother Peyton was already making big bucks, could have said, no, I'll wait it out for a year because our family's life isn't changed by a first overall pick salary. The draft is simultaneously awesome for top picks and inherently unfair for top picks. Right? The top draft guys have to go play for a bad team usually, and that's not great. Right, especially with the way we're looking at it with how difficult it is to develop quarterbacks and how certain franchises seem to get it wrong over and over and over again. Probably it's not fair, right? It's not like if you go become a accountant that you leave accountant school and they immediately go, you're going to Minnesota. I'm a West Coast guy. That's kind of like cold. I'm kind of a Southern California guy. Shador Sanders, you're going to Carolina. I'm a big city guy. My dad, I don't really want to. It doesn't matter. Just kind of the way it goes, right? Now, the other side of it is you're very, very handsomely compensated for all that in fairness. Caleb Williams got $39.5 million fully guaranteed for being drafted number 1 overall. And there's some of us amongst us, maybe me included, that say, for $40 million, I think you show up.
I'll make it work.
I play wherever I'm drafted for that kind of money, significantly less than that kind of money. I'll show up wherever I'm drafted, unless I have moral obligations about the organization, right? Unless the owner did something personal to my family or something like that. That's a whole different beast. But just if all else equal, I show up. I understand why you wouldn't, though. I see the logic. Don't agree with it, but see it. The Panthers have earned this questioning. I'm of the belief, in many ways, that the greatest quarterbacks out there are inevitable. Right? You put them anywhere, they will find a way to be successful because it's a drive, it's a determination, and it is a physical ability that is inevitable. If you believe that the greatest quarterbacks of all time are still situational, where you still need offensive line, great play calling early in your career to figure it out and eventually become great, you're not going to the Panthers. They haven't put their players in a great situation. Right? I'm of the belief that if Bryce Young isn't a long-term starting quarterback, if he would have been drafted by the Packers, he wouldn't be a long-term starting quarterback. But there's nothing arguing with the fact that through a season and a half, that guy has not been given every tool to improve. Right? He has not been given darn near any tool to improve, matter of fact. And if you believe in the inevitable quarterbacks, let's talk Cam Newton. Cam Newton's about as inevitable a quarterback as there is. Because he was a running game, he was a passing game, he was a short yardage game, he was a third and long game. He was everything bottled up into one, a one-stop shop for an offense. I think he can make an argument that the way the Panthers used him shortened his career. Now, as a whole different group, whole different ownership, whole different coaching staff, whole different everything. But if you look at the Panthers under this ownership, last ownership, this coaching staff, last coaching staff, not a lot of things that make you go, that's an awesome place for a quarterback to live and work and become a star. Here's the way I would do my best to handle it if I were the Panthers. And Dennis, this one might take some explanation.
Alrighty.
I kind of hope it happens. If I'm the Panthers, I kind of hope that there's one quarterback that rises above the rest, separates himself. There's one that is obviously the number one overall pick. And I kind of hope they say, I don't want to play for the Panthers. Here's why. I don't think the Panthers are ready for a quarterback. I don't think Dave Canales wants to trust a rookie again. I don't think Dave Tepper wants to go down the number one overall pick quarterback thing again. I don't think they want a quarterback. But if you have the number one overall pick and there's an obvious quarterback that is there for the taking, the only way you get the value out of that pick is if you take the player or if you trade away for someone to come up and take the player. Now, if I'm the Panthers and I have the number one overall pick and there's glorious, obvious number one overall pick quarterback and I start calling around going, hey, I'm trying to trade out. What do you give me? Everybody knows you don't like the player. But if you call up and go, I love this guy. I think he's the next Tom Brady. Problem is, he doesn't want to play for me. That's the only flaw is he doesn't want to play for my franchise. Make an offer. There's a little bit more leverage there, and I do think the Panthers might need a little bit of training wheels when it comes to negotiation for the next couple of years as their hopeful front office gets their sea legs with them. You want to talk about spin zone? I just turned a great player asking not to play for your team into an advantage. How about that? And then what do you get back? You get, well, this year's first, next year's first, this year's second, 2 seconds from the future, and a number one wide receiver. That's the market for a number one overall pick, right?
If the team's coming up from 9, yes.
True. That if the team's coming up from the 9th pick. That was the Bryce Young trade, by the way. I just backed into it. Which would be hilarious. If the Panthers set the market for how much a first overall pick is, so they way boost the market paying for it, so then 2 years later they then benefit from how high the market is for the number one overall pick. It's, coming and going. You get what you give. Be an all-time turnaround. Thank you, Fitterer, for overpaying.